Her boyfriend chose the blaring music of the nightclub over his girlfriend's cries for help, and now he's on his knees begging her to take him back. Want to know what kind of man does that? Stick with us for this tangled story. Riley lived alone on the third floor of an old building in South Philly, the kind of worn-out red brick walk-up that had changed hands too many times, with crumbling plaster, wires snaking across the ceiling, and an elevator that was basically for show. She never expected it to work. Coming home and climbing 3 flights in soaked shoes was part of the daily routine. She worked night shifts as an Amazon Flex driver, deliveries from 7 p.m. until her shift ended, usually close to midnight. No one made her. She chose night shifts for a reason: fewer people, less traffic, and no fake smiles for customers. Troy, her boyfriend, was the total opposite. He loved crowds, lights, the stage, and bass that hit you in the chest. They'd been together for 2 years. One of those spark-type romances. Met at a small bar where Riley was drinking with coworkers and Troy was backing some lead singer on guitar. Less than a week later, he moved in. Troy didn't do office jobs. He gigged at indie clubs around the city. Some nights he made $50, some nights got tipped double. Neither of them had money. The apartment was tiny with peeling paint and cracked walls, but Riley was fine with it. She figured as long as there was someone to come home to, that was enough. But as time went on, Troy played more shows and came home less. She got used to sleeping alone, got used to the sound of the upstairs neighbor stomping around instead of steady breathing beside her. It was a Saturday. Riley had taken a late shift with her last drop way out on the west side of the city, a residential area full of half-finished construction. It had been drizzling all day, the roads were slick, and as she stepped back off a customer's porch trying to dodge a puddle, she slipped. She fell hard, landing on the concrete with a thud. Her left hand shot out instinctively to break the fall and twisted at the wrist. Before she could even get up, she noticed blood soaking into her jeans. Her right knee had split open and was starting to bleed. The rain didn't let up. Riley just sat there for a few minutes. Her hands were shaking too much to even spray on a bandage. She pulled out her phone. 11:08 p.m. She called Troy. It rang 3 times, voicemail. She called again, still voicemail. She texted, "I fell, I need you." No one read it. 3 minutes later, she sent another. "My wrist's twisted, my knee's bleeding, I can't stand, I need you." A while later, the message turned to seen. No reply. Riley sat on the ground in a stranger's yard, soaked and freezing, her phone trembling in her right hand, the left one throbbing too much to move. Wind slapped her face. In her ears, she could still hear Troy's go-to line whenever she was upset. "It's nothing, babe. You always blow things up." She opened Instagram, muscle memory. First thing on her feed, a video of Troy performing at Club Vox, red and blue lights flashing, him screaming into the mic to a familiar punk rock track. The lead guitarist in a tank top, crowd screaming like they'd lost their minds. Caption underneath, "Burning the city down." Her message, "I need you," had been read 7 minutes ago. Riley bit her lip. She didn't curse, didn't cry, just stood up, or tried to anyway, balancing on one good leg with her left arm useless at her side. Every step pulled a hiss from her throat. She staggered to the car, popped the door open with her elbow, and dropped into the seat. She wasn't planning on going home. She just needed someone to wrap her wrist, or a pharmacy that stayed open late, or someone who'd choose her over a screaming crowd. 12:01 a.m. Riley called again. He declined the call immediately. She pulled up a map, searched for the nearest hospital. Too far. She couldn't drive. Her head dipped forward, breath coming fast. A wave of nausea hit her hard. Everything spun. She thought she might pass out. She opened the door and tried to get out. Just to breathe. The freezing air slapped her awake. She leaned against the car, then dragged herself toward the gate of her old apartment. 3 flights. No elevator. 1 bad leg. A left arm she couldn't use. She clung to every railing, every step, her cheek pressed against the freezing wall, her vision blurred. She couldn't tell if she was walking or crawling anymore. Halfway to the 3rd floor, Riley stopped. Sat down on the stairs like someone who'd been knocked out. She tried one last time to call. It rang once, then cut off. Dead battery. No one knew how long Riley had been lying next to the trash bins behind the building. No one heard her fall. The rain kept falling, steady and quiet, like it was swallowing every sound. The street light in that corner had been out for months. No one had bothered to fix it. Wind slid through the gap between buildings, making a sharp, broken breath sound. Riley lay there, one arm twisted under her, head tilted to the right, hair plastered to her cheek, lips pale, body curled like she'd just dozed off in the middle of winter. A little after 3 a.m., the familiar garbage truck rolled into the alley. Mike, the night shift driver, had run this route for nearly 4 years. His eyes were often blurry from sleep deprivation, but tonight, he caught something that didn't belong in the trash pile. A pair of dark sneakers sticking out from behind a plastic bin. He hit the brakes, opened the door, and stepped out. When Mike called, "Hey," Riley didn't move. He walked closer, bent down. "Miss?" No response. His hands shook slightly as he touched her shoulder. Ice cold. Her left wrist was swollen, deep purple. A dried streak of blood ran across her forehead, her skin stone cold. Mike gently rolled her onto her back, then pulled out his phone and called 911. "There's a girl unconscious behind 1430 Barrow Street. She's barely breathing, blood on her head, looks like a broken arm." He glanced around, waiting for someone, anyone, to step out from one of the nearby apartments. No one did. The ambulance arrived in under 10 minutes. They lifted Riley onto a stretcher, checked her pulse, fitted an oxygen mask. One of the EMTs, a nurse, looked at her and said softly, "Third floor girl, night shift driver, always comes home late." No one knew her name, just that she lived alone and rarely said hello. In the ER, the night shift doctor moved quickly. Head trauma, fractured left arm, plummeting blood pressure, early signs of a coma. They gave her meds, ran a CT scan, checked her pupils for response. Nothing. Riley was slipping deeper, like something had grabbed her and was pulling her under. It was 4:15 a.m. Riley's patient chart showed no spouse, no legal guardian, only one emergency contact, a mother in Ohio. The last number called on her phone couldn't be reached. The battery had died. When they plugged it in and powered it back on, the screen lit up with a string of unsent messages, all addressed to someone named Troy. The head nurse was the first to read them. Then she looked at Riley's wrist. A bruise, shaped like fingers. No one could confirm anything. But a cold sense of wrongness started to creep in, like fog rolling in under a door. She turned to the night doctor and said quietly, "I don't think this was just a fall." Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, Troy was still drunk on music and strobe lights. His Instagram story updated at 4:32 a.m., a behind-the-scenes clip of the band laughing, passing a bottle around. Someone shouted, "The city's on fire, Troy." He laughed back, "I am the fire." The caption read, "Best set ever. Philly, you're crazy." There were no messages from him. No missed calls. Not a single "Where are you?" No one in Troy's circle had any clue what had happened to Riley. And Troy himself, the one who'd read her message at 11 p.m. the night before, hadn't bothered to check back. At 6 a.m., a resident was reviewing patient charts when an ER nurse approached quietly. "Patient 419, Riley, might be an unexplained injury case. Should we notify the police?" The doctor shook his head. "Wait until the CT scan's back. If there's evidence of impact trauma, call it in. Otherwise, log it as a fall due to exhaustion." Riley still hadn't woken up. At 8 a.m., a day shift nurse came in to check her vitals. She recognized Riley from a past visit. She'd come in after cutting her hand on a delivery route, needed 3 stitches. Back then, Riley had said, "I could have handled it myself, but there was a lot of blood, so I figured I'd come in just in case." She'd even smiled. Now her lips hung slightly open, skin pale, hair matted in clumps. The nurse stepped out and ran into a hospital security guard carrying a stack of files. "She lives alone?" he asked. "Seems like it. No one came with her. Looks like the boyfriend didn't show either." "You guys try calling him." "We called every number in her contacts. No one answered. A few numbers are disconnected. Some just don't work anymore." Around the same time, a neighbor from the 3rd floor, Mrs. Linda, a 60-year-old widow, walked into the ER to drop off Riley's helmet, which she'd found on the stairwell. When she heard Riley was in the hospital, she said, "Last night I heard limping footsteps on the stairs, and someone saying, 'Troy, it hurts so bad,' then nothing after that." The nurse took notes, and with every detail, the suspicion grew heavier. A girl living alone, calling her boyfriend over and over in the middle of the night. Found unconscious in a dark alley. No cameras, no witnesses. Just signs of injury and a phone filled with desperate, unanswered messages. At 9:10 a.m., the hospital finally reached Riley's mother. She caught the earliest bus out of Columbus. Her voice trembled over the phone. "Is she okay? Is my baby okay?" The doctor didn't answer directly. He just said, "We're doing everything we can. Please get here as soon as you can." When Troy finally woke up, near noon, no one had called him. No one thought he mattered anymore. Because sometimes, absence is evidence, clearer than any testimony. Troy was still asleep with the sun high in the sky, his face buried in a mess of pillows, the stench of booze and sweat soaked into the sheets. His phone lay face down on the floor, battery at 2%, too low to even show the missed calls and unread texts. It wasn't until almost 1 p.m. that he finally sat up, eyes swollen, head heavy like it was packed with stones. The first to break the news was Connor, the band's drummer, who called after spotting a post on a neighborhood forum, looking for family of injured woman found last night on Barrow Street, currently in emergency care at Jefferson South Hospital. Troy thought it was clickbait at first, some internet hoax. But when Connor read the description out loud, female, about 26-28, brown hair, gray hoodie found by a garbage truck at 3:15 a.m., Troy went silent. 10 minutes later, he threw on a wrinkled t-shirt, shoved his car keys in his pocket, and rushed to the hospital. No flowers, no call ahead. Just stormed in and barked at the front desk. "Riley Evans, where is she?" The ER doctor told him to wait. But the person who came out to meet him wasn't hospital staff. It was a woman whose calm had already shattered. Riley's mother. She stood just outside the emergency room door. Gray-streaked hair, dark blue sweater buttoned to the top, worn shoes caked with mud, clearly fresh off a long trip. She stopped Troy with one sentence: "She's in the ICU, and she's not taking visitors." He started to argue, started to say something to explain himself. But under her stare, all he managed was a mumbled, "I didn't know, I didn't think. Is she really that bad?" Riley's mother looked him over from head to toe, the beer-stained shirt, the bloodshot eyes, whether from no sleep or a hangover, no one could say. She spoke softly, but every word hit the tiled floor like stone. "If you read those messages last night and didn't answer, then yes, you should be asking yourself that." Troy wasn't let in. He stayed in the waiting area for hours, eyes locked on the floor, clutching his phone like it might still deliver a miracle. No one came to get him. No one called his name. Later that afternoon, he finally sent a text, short and unsure. "Heard you're in the hospital. I'm here, in the lobby." No reply. An hour later, the next message came. "I didn't know it was that serious. I saw your texts last night, but I thought you were just mad." Still no response. By evening, panic crept in. He started firing off messages. "Riley, please answer. I'm sorry, I mean it. Last night was our biggest set ever. I got caught up, didn't check my phone. I didn't think you would." He deleted that last line, replaced it with, "I was late, but I'm here now. Just say the word, I'll come in." Inside the ICU, Riley hadn't regained full consciousness. Her vitals were stable, no signs of brain bleeding on the scans, but they were keeping a close watch. Her arm was in a cast, head wrapped in gauze. Her mother sat slumped in the chair beside her, Riley's phone resting on the nightstand. When the screen lit up with another message, she glanced at it, then turned it off without reading further. The next morning, Riley opened her eyes. She didn't say a word. Her eyes drifted slowly around the room, then stopped on the ceiling light. Her mother stood up and gently took her good hand. "You're awake. You're safe now." Riley gave a slight nod, like waking up in a hospital was something she'd already expected. Her mother handed her the phone. Riley held it, stared at the screen, didn't unlock it. She set it down on the table and turned her face toward the wall. She didn't ask where Troy was, didn't ask who called or who came. When the doctor came in for rounds, he checked her vitals, then spoke gently. "We're relieved, no brain trauma. The left arm will need to stay in a cast for at least 6 weeks. After that, physical therapy." He turned to her mother. "Physically, your daughter will recover, but I'd recommend a quiet place for rest and healing." Riley heard all of it, said nothing, until midday. A nurse came in and asked if she wanted to clean up, maybe take a shower. Riley shook her head. "I want to be transferred." She said it evenly, not loud, not soft, but with a cold, cutting clarity. The nurse blinked. "Transferred where? We can give you great care here." Riley answered, "Anywhere else, as long as it's not somewhere he's ever set foot." Her mother didn't speak. She just held Riley's hand tighter. The file was updated that afternoon. A handwritten transfer request, neatly signed. Reason: patient's psychological recovery requires distance from emotionally triggering individuals. The ICU door stayed closed. Troy still hadn't been let in. No one told him Riley had woken up. Not because they forgot, but because no one believed he had any right to know. After Riley signed the transfer papers, Troy started to unravel. He didn't know exactly where she'd been moved, just heard secondhand from a former nurse that she'd left the ICU by the end of the day. No one at the hospital confirmed it. His number wasn't listed in her emergency contacts, and even if it had been, no one would have called. So he switched tactics, started messaging mutual friends, asking them to find out. Some flat out refused. A few, out of courtesy, sent messages to Riley's mom. None were answered. One evening, he was seen lingering near the back lot of the hospital, where staff usually took their breaks. Hands stuffed in his jacket pockets, eyes darting around like someone waiting on a deal. But he wasn't looking for contraband. He was waiting for a sliver of a chance to see her, even once. 4 days in a row, he showed up at that same corner, hands full with takeout containers, hot coffee, handwritten notes, trying everything. But Riley never came through that exit. No one passed the items inside. The only response he got was from security. "You're not on the list. If you keep hanging around, we'll have to call the police." On the 5th day, he brought a small Marshall speaker, sat on the curb about 50 meters from the treatment wing, and started playing guitar. A slow ballad, the one he'd written during their first year together. His voice cracked, lost in the hum of traffic and ambulance sirens. A passing nurse paused for maybe half a minute, then kept walking. 2 doctors glanced his way, didn't even bother hiding their indifference. Eventually, an older security guard approached and said gently, "I know you think this is romantic, but to everyone else, it's just noise." Troy shut off the speaker, got up, didn't say a word. As for Riley, from beginning to end, not a single message, not a word. Not even the faintest sign she knew he was trying to reach her. She didn't rage, didn't accuse, didn't curse him out. She just stayed silent. And that silence, not violent, not loud, not cruel, was what crushed him. It didn't slash or scream. It pressed inward, slow and steady, like something tightening around his chest. It made him ask himself over and over, how bad did I have to be treated like I was never there at all? A week after the accident, he sent one final voice note. "I know you're seeing this. I thought you were just mad, like those times you'd come home late without texting me. I never imagined it was this serious. I swear, if I had known, no one opened it." That afternoon, Riley sat up for the first time in over 10 days. The nurse removed the final layer of bandage from her left arm. The bruises were still there, deep purple, scattered from wrist to elbow. Some had faded to a dull yellow, nearly healed. But Riley didn't look at the injury with pity. She looked at it the way someone might look at an object they no longer recognized or claimed. Her hand, the one that used to grip delivery boxes, turn a steering wheel, peel off shipping labels, now sat stiff in her lap, numb, like it belonged to someone else. She rotated her wrist slightly. A sharp jolt of pain. Still there. She didn't flinch. That evening, Riley asked the nurse to call a private taxi. She had already paid her bills, signed the discharge papers. Didn't wait for her mother. In her bag were just 3 things: a wallet, a phone, and a notebook that hadn't held a single word in months. She walked down the hallway, eyes steady, steps slow but sure. A doctor nodded at her. She nodded back. A nurse whispered, "Do you need a wheelchair?" Riley shook her head. Just before stepping through the hospital's front doors, Riley paused for a single beat. Beyond the glass, afternoon sunlight fell soft across the sidewalk. The grass out front still held the faint tracks from the ambulance that had brought her in. Her mother was parked at the curb, waiting. She rolled down the window, started to open the door to get out. But Riley waved her off. She opened the back door herself, climbed in, and said, "Let's go." They drove in silence, headed toward the temporary apartment they had rented for her recovery. No one spoke. Until they were almost there. That's when her mother finally said, voice quiet, If you hadn't dragged yourself out that night, I wouldn't have a daughter anymore." Riley didn't reply, but this time she reached for her mother's hand. Lightly, just enough to hold on to the words, without turning them into another wound. Since the day she was discharged, Riley never went back to the old apartment. She asked her mother to return for the rest, close the lease, grab a few boxes of clothes. She left no note, no message for the neighbors, no forwarding number for the landlord. The apartment sat empty, locked, like no one had ever lived there at all. The old phone number was gone, voicemail deactivated. When Troy called, all he got was a dead line. "This number is no longer in service." He tried calling from unknown numbers. No one picked up. He sent dozens of messages through old chat apps. None showed as seen. At first, he blamed connection issues, but soon he understood. She hadn't just blocked him. She had erased every doorway he could enter. She'd stepped out of the world he lived in and closed it behind her. During the first week, he called non-stop. The next 2, he turned to writing music. Lyrics soaked in guilt and regret. "Wish I'd picked up. I should have run when you called. Someone once chose me, and I didn't choose her back." He played them in small clubs, hoping someone would hear. Hoping someone might tell her. No one did. No one brought anything back. Riley was somewhere else now. She'd rented a small room in a quiet building on the western edge of the city, far from nightclubs, far from the usual gas station, far from that broken stairwell that once gave way under her feet. Just 3 stories. Neighbors were older folks and young families. No one asked too many questions. By week 3, she was back at work, still delivering for Amazon Flex, but now on the morning shift, out early, home early. Her arm had mostly healed. The bruises faded to pale shadows, and all that remained was a faint, wrinkled patch of skin near her left shoulder, a reminder of a storm that hadn't come with warning. No one really noticed her, except the local postal driver. They nodded to each other every morning. No need for words. One afternoon, after dropping off her last delivery, Riley stopped at the convenience store near her place to grab a bottle of water. As she stepped outside, she paused, saw a man unloading crates into the back of the store. He turned, their eyes met. A flicker of recognition, a small, surprised nod. It was Mike, the garbage truck driver from that night. He didn't say, "It's you." Didn't say, "I remember you." He just gave a small nod, quiet, respectful, enough for both of them to know they knew. Riley nodded back, offered a faint smile. Not a thank you. Not polite. More like 2 people who had both made it through something they wouldn't speak of, and didn't need to. That night, back in her room, Riley took a hot shower, ate cold noodles for dinner, then stood in front of the mirror for a long time. She looked at herself the way someone might look at a familiar face they hadn't seen in a while. Her hair was a little longer, her skin a little paler. The loose sweater covered most of her frame. Then she lifted her arm and slowly pulled the sweater off over her head. Her left shoulder was exposed, and there it was, the scar, not big, not deep, but enough. Enough to remind her that sometimes all it takes is one missed call, one careless silence, and everything can end. She touched it lightly, almost as if to ask if it still remembered. It didn't hurt, it wasn't cold, just skin now. Healed. Riley turned on the bedside lamp, climbed into bed, and pulled the blanket up to her chest. No ringtones, no messages, none needed. She closed her eyes. Sometimes, you don't need to scream to end something. You just stop looking back when the other person finally starts to beg. Some relationships don't end in a fight. No one cheats. No doors slammed, no suitcase crashing to the floor. They end quietly, when one person calls for help and the other simply doesn't come. Not because they couldn't, but because they chose not to. Riley didn't cry, didn't plead, didn't rage. She just walked out of that relationship like walking out of a room filled with smoke. Because once someone lets you fall and doesn't come back for you, next time you learn to stand on your own. Sometimes the clearest revenge is never needing to be rescued again. And what about you? If you were Riley in this story, would you turn back? Or would you walk away without leaving a trace? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're drawn to real stories, the kind that hurt but wake you up, that cut deep but hit the truth, make sure to subscribe to Love Stories so you never miss the next chapter. Thanks for listening.